Hello, my name is George Craven and I'm here to talk to you about something which I'm very passionate about, astrophotography. It is a combination of astronomy, which I've always loved ever since we got a basic telescope when I was 5, and photography, which I've got into very recently when I got my Nikon D3000 digital camera. I do this hobby with my dad usually because aligning the telescope and focusing the equipment can be very hard and fiddly. First of all, I'd like to show you some of the objects in the night sky which you can see and which I've tried to photograph. The following photos were all taken by professionals of my spacecraft, but later I'll show you some photos of the same objects. First, a few solar system objects. Jupiter is a gas giant and has 4 main moons, but in total it has over 50. Even with a small telescope, you can see very faint and blurry bands of swirling gas. You can also see the Galilean moons, Io, Ganymede, Europa and Callisto. You can also see the Great Red Spot, a mega hurricane that could encase Earth. Saturn certainly fits its name as Queen of the Solar System. It even has a crown of aurorae around the poles. With a simple telescope you can even see a few moons, and most importantly the rings. With a better telescope you may even be able to see the different rings and the famous Cassini division. The most famous of its moons being Titan with its thick atmosphere, Mimas, which looks like the infamous Death Star, and Enceladus, a moon which spews out sub-zero streams of liquid nitrogen. In a good photo of Mars, the polar ice caps can be seen, along with the biggest canyon in the solar system, Valles Marineris, which dwarfs the Grand Canyon. Mars has been the target of many landers, orbiters and rovers, all searching for liquid water and maybe even life. While it is possible that life may have existed, it is extremely unlikely due to its coldness and lack of a thick atmosphere. Arguably the easiest object to photograph in the night sky, the moon can be captured with even a simple phone camera. With a telescope like ours, however, one can spot many craters, mountains and valleys on the moon. If you're lucky, you may even spot a crater on the edge of day and night, called the Terminator, half bathed in light, so it almost looks like a handle. And now, way beyond these, the most famous deep sky objects. M31 is a spiral galaxy in the constellation Andromeda. It is the closest big galaxy to ours and fated to collide with the Milky Way in about 4.5 billion years. It is the most distant object visible to the naked eye, 2.2 million light years away. This means you're actually seeing the Andromeda galaxy as it was 2.2 million years ago, so you're essentially seeing the past. In the Orion Nebula, you can see the glowing clouds of primordial gases and dust, where stars start their lives and sometimes live there too. It contains many smaller nebulae, such as the Flame Nebula, the Horsehead Nebula, and more. You can also see the Trapezium, a collection of 4 stars in the centre of the nebula. The Pleiades is a good target for astrophotographers, new and experienced, as it is a bright, open cluster of stars. 14 are visible with the naked eye and over 800 in total. It's good for all levels, it is bright and very rewarding, so it can be captured with any telescope and even a phone camera. The equipment is the most important part of the astrophotographer's toolkit. While some are essential, others, such as a telephoto lens and next image camera, are used for taking photos of specific objects. Our camera, shown here, is a starter camera. It is a Nikon D3000 and is capable up to 30 seconds auto exposure and infinite manual. Paired with a telephoto lens, it's one of the best cameras for aspiring photographers. However, when you're astrophotographing, especially with long exposures, you also need a tripod. If you're taking a photo and the camera moves, then the whole photo will appear trailed and blurry. The telephoto lens is a special lens which allows you to zoom into more distant objects, as well as very faint ones. It is extremely adaptable, can be used for nearly all astrophotos. It is very important to be able to focus on a star or planet. This is where infinity focus comes in. For a start, you need to take focus on a distant tree or steeple and mark the focus. This is what you will use to take photos of everything in the night sky. Focus is just one of the many factors you need to take account of, like the ISO setting, light sensitivity, and clouds, which can spoil a good observing session. The This telescope is a Celestron Astrophi, which can be controlled by a mobile phone, a major advantage because touching the telescope even slightly, you may move the object out of view. It must be aligned first, as the telescope does not know where to go by itself. The telescope itself is a Schmidt-Cassegrain reflecting with an 150mm concave mirror. It automatically tracks stars and objects that it is selected on. The bigger the mirror, the more light can enter the telescope, so that allows fainter objects to be seen. Focal length is also important. The bigger the focal length, the higher magnification, which is good for fine detail and small objects. Our telescope has a focal length of 100mm. The Piggyback Mount is a mount which enables the camera to be attached to the body of the telescope and tracked with it. It is important for reducing star trails in long exposure photographs. Star trails are formed in long exposures because the stars slowly move across the field of view, sending out light the whole time because the Earth is spinning on its axis. This causes stars to appear with a tail on the photo. The next image camera is a very important camera which allows you to take videos of planets through the telescope, which can then be stacked using special image processing software, which puts all the individual frames of video on top of each other, picking out important spots and refining the final image. The camera itself is small and fits onto the eyepiece of the telescope. Image processing software is the final step of the photo's journey, as we download it onto a laptop or iPad. Can then edit the photo, or in some cases stack the video, in just the normal app editing software for Apple, or with a package called RegStack 6. Most of the photos I will show next have been edited in some shape, way or form. This slide shows some of the many steps which are needed to take a good astrophoto. They include warm clothes in winter, connecting the phone to the telescope and attaching the camera to it. This next section is dedicated to some of the photos that we have taken from our garden in Caterham, how we took them and what they show. I'll also compare our photos to the professional ones I showed earlier. Jupiter was the first photo of a single object I ever took with my newly acquired Celestron telescope combined with the NextImage 5 camera. I felt inspired to take a photograph of the most majestic planet in the solar system. It isn't perfect, but the cloud band's just visible, as well as the great red spot. Saturn came next with rings that put me in awe when I first saw it. We processed these images in RegStack, our image processing software. Back to Saturn. It was amazing, the partition of the rings and the clearly visible bands of colour. Mars was taken the latest, when it was at its peak and best at its brightest. With some image processing, we were able to bring out one of the main geographic features of Mars, Syrtis Major, a dark V-shaped patch. Here's a selection of photos that we have taken of the Moon, with a mobile phone attached to a telescope. You can see craters, mountains and even valleys. This is the M31. We first captured the galaxy when we were trying wide-angle skyscape photos. You can just about see a small fuzzy disk on the photo, which is the galaxy. It's circled in red so you can see it better. Recently we got a closer view of the Telephoto Lens piggybacked on the telescope. The Orion Nebula is my most recent shot. In short, it must be one of my favourite photos. We do want to get a closer shot by piggybacking. The Pleiades was taken in mainly the same way as the Orion Nebula, with a medium exposure on a piggyback telescope. This is as far as I've got at the moment, but I do want to keep practicing more with the equipment and with the software to learn more about optics and imaging. I hope this might inspire you to have a try at it, the same way I did with your phone or camera. Thank you and goodbye. Happy astrophotographing!